Hello, everybody. My name is Randy Brock, and I'm hoping you're having a pretty wonderful day. Today, we'll be talking about expert systems. The agenda for this lesson is pretty straightforward. We'll start with what is an expert system, how are they used, the components, the advantages, the disadvantages, the future of expert systems, my reflection on the lesson, and then I'll open the floor for any questions. And lastly, I'll have my references listed. So let us begin with what is an expert system. When it comes to expert systems, also known as artificial intelligence, you may have seen movies where the portrayal of a robot is that it's so advanced that it wants to overthrow mankind. I mean, the list of movies go on and on about this, but in reality, we're not there just yet. However, there have been instances like the Y2K where technology was portrayed as the end of the world. And as silly as it may sound today, back when computers and technology were just being introduced, I would understand that people were afraid of it, realistically. But nevertheless, by definition of London K and London J, they state expert systems are an intelligent technique for capturing tactic knowledge in a very specific and limited domain of human expertise. These systems capture the knowledge of skilled employees in the form of a set of rules in a software system that can be used by others in the organization. The set rules in the expert system also adds memory to the system and stores it in addition to allowing the firm to go back in and add more information to it. Now that you understand what an expert system is, we can now get into how they are used. But before I do that, I want to mention a company called Amazon. I'm pretty sure you heard of it. It's an organization that revolutionized the way that we purchase items. Well, anyways, how many times have you purchased an item from Amazon and they delivered the wrong product? For me, I don't think I've ever received a wrong product when I purchase something from Amazon. Well, this is not by sheer luck. Okay, I mean Amazon has hundreds of thousands of products that they are managing in their warehouses, yet they're able to always accurately give me what I'm purchasing. The reason behind that is because they use expert systems. I mean, expert systems have vast capabilities, and that is actually why so many large organizations who can afford them use them. But just managing your stock is not the only thing an expert system can do. So look at this. They can also help with the decision making, derive a solution, diagnose a problem, interpret input, and justify a conclusion. Now, let's think outside of the box right now. Okay, you you're a consumer and you're looking to purchase a 10-gallon milk jug. Well, you need the milk jug. You're open to alternatives, but when you go to the store to purchase that 10-gallon milk jug, you it's not there. So in your mind, what you do is you determine a solution to fix this problem. Well, that's what an expert system does. So instead of getting that 10 gallons of milk, you or the expert system will then translate that into getting 2 5-gallon milk jugs, which equal 10. Well, if you go back and you ask, well, why did you purchase 2 5-gallons? The justification for that is there was no 10 gallons, but we needed 10 gallons. Therefore, I supplied us with 2 5-gallons, which equals 10 gallons. Hopefully I didn't throw you off right there, but that's pretty much how these systems are used. You don't have to worry about, mathematical equations hypothetically when you utilize an expert system. Whereas a human, you're trusting the human's knowledge base to come up with the answer. However, on the contrary, with the wide range of possibilities, there are some areas that AI technology is limited to, such as substituting human decision making and producing accurate output with an inadequate knowledge base, which I'm about to get into the knowledge base. But you'll see that these systems run off of human knowledge. But like I said, I'm about to get into that. The inner workings of an expert system may not be as complicated as you would assume. Nevertheless, there are 3 key components that I want you to remember: the knowledge base, the interference engine, and the user interface. The knowledge base for the system is precisely what it sounds like. It involves the expert or experts inputting their knowledge into the system in an if-then scenario to then transfer that information to the interference engine. Next, we have the interference engine, which serves as the brains to the system. Theoretically, it works like this. After the information is inputted in the knowledge base, it is transferred to the interference engine like I stated. It then applies the logistical rules derived from the knowledge base to make further decisions, solve problems, and automate services. After that, it is then transferred to the user interface. Now, a user interface is similar to like the knowledge base. The name entails what it does. This is where a user actually interacts with the system, in which the system then provides output to it. So think of it like this. An interference engine works by searching through the rules and firing those rules that are triggered by facts gathered and entered by the user to the interference engine. Then the interference engine provides output on whatever the user inputted. As you saw in the previous slide, those 3 components drive the expert system. Now, I'll be lying if I said, oh, you could work on any of them first and then come back, because you just don't want to do that. You could forget to come back to configuring another one of the components. So if you were to do it as I suggested, you'll be walking away with some advantages. For instance, you can minimize turnaround times. Let's face it, nobody likes to wait long hours, days, months for a single response. Well, when you're dealing with an individual, you're at the mercy of their schedule, their work hours, their meetings, etc. Now, if you think about it, all of those could cause a delay in the process. Well, with an expert system, you don't get that. That is because the systems are continuously operating. You don't need an individual directly behind the system 24/7. It's just not necessary. Now, aside from patching and fixing some malfunctions, which require minimal downtime, your systems will have lightning reaction compared to that of an individual. The next advantage is it provides reasonable explanations to decisions. In most cases, top-level managers need to know why a specific decision was made over another. Well, that is where the stated advantage comes in which that it can clarify the reasons why the conclusion was drawn and why it is considered as the most logical choice. Now, another advantage is that an expert system is capable of providing consistent answers for repetitive decisions, processes, and tasks. Now, frequently, when an employee has to answer questions over and over and over or conduct the same tasks, it can quickly become exhausting. I mean, that's just how humans are built. If we work too hard on something, we become exhausted. Now, with exhaustion, you may or may not know that mistakes are then made. Well, that's not something we want. Therefore, the expert system removes that human error and frees up time for other business duties. So while the person is exhausted, they could take a break. Whereas the expert system will just keep pushing out solutions, answers, etc. to the individual. Now, the last advantage I want to talk about is the increase in productivity. I mean, every company wants to hear, oh, our productivity has skyrocketed. Or, hey, we're doing so good on our productivity, we are now meeting supply with demand. It's wonderful to hear that. Well, when you take the advantages I spoke upon and add every benefit I did not, the outcome of an expert system will undoubtedly increase your productivity because it frees up time for other employees and it works around the clock. Now, based off of those advantages, I'm sure you're jumping out of your seat, ready to go tell your company, hey, we need to implement these expert systems because it will change our lives. It will advance our productivity. We no longer have to worry about customers going to our competitors because we're not responding in time, etc. Well, before you do that, let me talk about the disadvantages. For one, it cannot learn from mistakes. Unfortunately, with the concept of formulating the system to function off of the human input, that opened doors to human error. For example, if the expert tells the system 5 plus 5 equals 20, that is how the machine would answer the equation from the user interface. As such, the system could not formulate the correct answer because it was told differently. Next, the other disadvantage is that it's unable to internally develop a resolution to issues. Similar to the system not being able to correct human input errors, if a person introduces the expert system to a request that was not inputted into the knowledge base, then it cannot create its own belief to provide the end user with an acceptable reply. Back to the equation. If the user puts what is 6 times 2 and the knowledge base never identified 6 plus 2 or 6 times 2, it would not be able to provide them with the proper answer. It'll be an error. The next disadvantage is the cost. Now, with systems that automate our practices, make our lives easier, we have to expect that costs are going to be involved. Even further, we have to realize that those high costs do not stop with the purchase of the expert system, its design, or anything else. That high cost also follows the maintenance of that system. So don't expect to get by with just paying a lot of money up for it, because it continuously needs money to operate as the company wishes. Now, as we covered with the first disadvantage, any information that goes into an expert system will be utilized during its decision process. In most cases, when such a problem occurs, it is not intentional. Therefore, it is commonly overlooked. Now, yes, you have things in place such as tests and analysis of the system to find these errors, but consequently, when you don't, people may not be aware that the system is making the wrong choices when provoked with requests, tasks, or questions. Now, let's get into an expert system in action so you could get a generalized understanding of how companies are employing this. So, as you can imagine, these systems are used throughout an array of industries, whether it's medicine, the restaurant industry, or educational platforms. However, for this lesson, we will look at one in particular, and that is how it is utilized in modern medicine. As many people are aware, medical facilities are typically the last chance for a person to recover or, even worse, survive catastrophic injuries. When you take into consideration the fact that the general population significantly outnumbers medical staff, as we have seen in the COVID pandemic, it can go without saying that the staff is stretched thin and possibly even overexhausted. Now, if you remember, I talked about exhaustion before and how it's linked to making mistakes. That is solely because our brains are not capable of fully operating when we have exerted so much energy. Nevertheless, that is where expert systems are applied in medicine. Now, when it comes to the benefits for the system in medicine, there are three key areas I want to highlight. One, it bridges crucial gaps that currently exist in diagnosis and treatment. Two, it minimizes human decision making and provides automated clinical decision support to facilities and patients. And three, it assists with the diagnosis of illnesses, injuries, and then it provides logical treatment. Now, you may get this confused with the first highlight I wanted to mention, but the key thing here is that it provides logical treatment. Not all systems will provide logical treatment. Sometimes the doctor is just trying to figure out the diagnosis of a patient. And similar to just a regular broken arm, they'll put it in a cast. They don't need a machine telling them, all right, you put this in a cast. Now, with illnesses, it's a little different. Um, some medicines may or may not have worked on past patients, or there's a new advancement in medicine that has showed promise in helping a person overcome their sickness. Now, before I move on to the next slide, there is one I did not list. However, it's still a beneficial aspect of an expert system in medicine, and that is it can preserve scarce knowledge. Think of it like this. An expert system can capture the knowledge of a single individual or individuals who specialize in a certain area. This information can then be utilized years or centuries from now. So it's important to not look at this as a technology type of life cycle where what you know today or what you're using today can be replaced by something tomorrow. It's not the same in the medical industry. Sometimes a disease can go decades without occurring in the population, but once it occurs, then you need to know what previous practices were used to combat that issue. Now, when it comes to future of expert systems, realistically, there is no telling what the future holds. Who knows? Maybe the movies showcasing the self-efficient AI robots is dictating what scientists are trying to achieve in the future. Nevertheless, based on the current positions of the systems, my take is that for one, the systems will have advancements in its learning. For instance, the expert system would be capable of directly receiving data from the outside world, and it can then input the data into the knowledge base. The next advancement I believe will occur is that it will correct human errors based on logical sense. As I mentioned earlier, with human error causing issues within the system's decision-making process, my thought is that it will soon be self-correcting, or even alert the inputter of a discrepancy similar to that of Microsoft Word. The last future projection, I think, is that it will take over manager roles. With these systems becoming super intelligent, one could only assume that the knowledge level will eventually supersede that of one human being. Theoretically, we have seen this already occur, such as factories, we have self-driving cars. So in the future, these possibilities could increase. Now, let's look at what we learned today about expert systems. One, expert systems are an intelligent technique for capturing tactic knowledge in every specific and limited domain of human expertise. These systems capture the knowledge of skilled employees in the form of a set of rules in a software system that can be used by other or in the organization. Now, the set of rules in the expert system also adds to the memory or stored learning for the firm. Second, we talked about how they are used, which spanned from automated decision making to justifying why the system provided a particular solution. Then we moved on to the advantages and disadvantages, which we saw that while the positives for an expert system is that it minimizes turnaround time, provides reasonable explanations to decisions, and is capable of providing consistent answers for repetitive decisions, processes, and lastly, it increases productivity. So, that would make one want to adopt an expert system. However, On the contrary, the disadvantages is that the expert systems cannot learn from their mistakes, are unable of internally developing resolution to issues, has a higher cost, and it will replicate human input errors. Following that, I introduce you to how the expert system is used within an actual workforce, such as the medical industry. And lastly, I touched on the future of the expert system, which is practically impossible to predict due to how fast these advancements have have changed over the past few years. So that now concludes my presentation. I'll open the floor for any questions you may have, any concerns. I'll even open the floor for discussion about expert systems in which you could share information with the rest of us. Now, if there are no extra input, then I would like to thank you for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.